Today I'm going to walk you through a beginner-friendly knitting pattern for a dishcloth. This pattern is formed in such a way that you start at one corner, work your way out to the outer corners, and then down to the bottom corner. This forms a nice square and is easily adjustable to make it as big or as small as you would like. So here's what you need. Cotton yarn, and the label always gives a suggestion of how big of needles you need. Knitting needles, a quilting needle, and a pair of scissors. Let's start and put the yarn onto the needle. From the end of your yarn, choke up a little bit so we have a good tail to work with. We're going to make a slip knot, so wrap around your fingers and pull through. Now we have a loop. We're going to take one of our needles and pull it through the loop. Take the tail of your yarn and pull it snug. That stitch on the knitting needle is tight, but it's not too tight. It can still slide back and forth. We're going to cast on 3 more stitches or loops to make a total of 4. The tail is closest to you, and the rest of the yarn is in the back. So we're going to grab that yarn and take our pointer finger and thumb through the 2 strands of yarn and pull through. So we have the yarn crossed over in front of our thumb and over our pointer finger. Now to cast on, we're going to take our knitting needle under the yarn that's in front of our thumb and over the yarn in front of our index finger. Then take it back through where you came from and pull tight. Now we have 2 stitches. Let's do it 2 more times. Under, over, back where you came through, and pull. Last time. Under, over, through, pull. That's the hardest part. So if you need to pause, start over, that's okay. Now we have 4 stitches. I'm going to keep the tail in my left hand as I transfer the knitting needle to my left hand. Now, with our free needle, we're going to take that needle through the front of the first stitch and through the back. If I look back, it's only going through the front of that loop, not through the back. Take the loose yarn, wrap it around, and pull the needle back through. From there, you'll let that first stitch go. Repeat on the remaining 3. Through the front of the stitch, wrap around, back where you came from, and release. Through the front, wrap, back where you came from, release. Through the front, wrap around, release. Now we have 4 stitches. That is your basic knit stitch. So we'll transfer it around, continue to hold the tail. We're going to add on just a little bit to this pattern. So we're going to do just like we did to the first 2 stitches. So through the front, wrap, through, release, through the front, wrap, return, release. Now here, we're going to take our yarn, what we call a yarn over. Our yarn has been coming from the back of our needles. Now we're going to thread it to the front. Now continue knitting like you have. Through the front, wrap, return, release. Through the front, wrap, return, and release. And now you can see we have added 1 stitch. This is going to be our pattern as we move through. So again, I hold the tail, knit the first 2. Through the front, wrap, return, release. Through the front, wrap, return. So that was 2. We got a yarn over. to the front of your knitting needles, then continue your knit stitch. And now we have 6 stitches. We will continue this pattern until we have about 40 or so stitches on our needle. So 2 knits, yarn over, knit the remaining of the row. And as you go, you can see you're slowly building. I will check back with you when I've got a few more stitches on my needle. Here we are at 40 stitches. This is where you can start to make it your own. If you want a bigger square, you can do more, keep going, adding. If you want a smaller square, you can do less stitches. You'll know how big you're making it by this edge. This is going to be the width of your square. So this is half, and I'm going to start decreasing. So far we've been adding 1 stitch to each row. Now we're going to start to decrease by 1 stitch in each row. It's still a simple pattern, but it's a little bit different. So on that first stitch, we're going to do our regular knit stitch that we're used to doing. Now we're going to knit the next 2 stitches together. To do this, we're going to take our needle through the front of both. And the first couple times you do this, it's a little bit tricky, but if I turn around, you'll see I'm through the front of these 2 stitches. Then, like we've been doing, we'll wrap the yarn, we'll pull it through, and then we'll release those 2 stitches. So now, only 2 on our right needle. Now we'll do our yarn over, and we're going to knit these 2 stitches together. Now there is 4, and we're going to knit the rest of the row. So once again, here's our pattern. Knit the first stitch, knit 2 together, yarn over, knit 2 together, and knit the rest of the row. I will check back when I have only 4 stitches on my needle. I continued that pattern of decreasing by 1 stitch in each row, and now I've completed my square. So I have 4 stitches left on my needle. Now we're going to go through a process called casting off. We're going to close off these 4 stitches and finish up our dishcloth. So to start, we are going to knit the first 2 stitches. From here, now I've got 2 stitches on my right needle. I'm going to take my left needle under the very first stitch, so the one closest to my thumb. I'm going to pull it over the second stitch, and then I'm going to pull that second stitch through. So now it looks like this. Then we're going to release that first stitch. Repeat. Knit the next stitch on your needle. We've got 2 stitches. Take the original stitch, pull it over the one that you just knit, keep that knit one on your needle, and release. Last time, knit, take that original stitch, pull it over, and release. Now we've got 1 stitch. Here, I like to pull it up. So we've got a nice long tail. So now we have a new tail. I am going to take my needle out. I have my scissors now, and with that loop, I'm going to take, snip. I'm going to pull the yarn from the ball of yarn out. Now we've got a tail on one side and a tail on the other. Here is where our quilting needle will come in handy. I took one tail, thread it through my quilting needle. From here, I'm going to thread it through back and forth just a few times along my dishcloth. There's no rhyme or reason. You can go wherever you want, but do get I try to do 3 passes through. I'll check in when I've got that. So I ended up doing about 4 little pass-throughs. From here, I'll just remove that needle, take my scissors, and snip. And now that tail disappeared. I will do the same thing with our second tail. Both tails have now been sewn into the knitting, so here is our final dishcloth. Remember, you can make this as big or as small as you'd like, so have fun and let us know what you think. Bye, guys.